I actually started really, I mean, in video and cinema and film. When I was in college, I hadn't done any photography, really, video or anything. But I was in an English 102 class in my second semester. My professor said, instead of a research paper, I want you guys to film and shoot a documentary series. And so I did that, and I was hooked at that point. So I started actually making films, and I would actually make them with my professor. So he would write films, and I would shoot and edit them. And I did that for a couple years, and then I just picked up photography from there. And it's funny, I think about it all the time. I look back and you think about all the times when you were growing up, and thinking back on it, I was always the kid who was always grabbing the camera, you know? Home videos, you're always the one who's grabbing the camera and shooting, doing video. And actually my mom was a photographer all growing up, but it never even interested me at all, so I didn't even think about it. But I think it all has kind of culminated, you know? Growing up, yeah, my dad he always had a video camera on his shoulder, home videos. My mom was always taking photos. So yeah, when you really start reflecting back, I mean, you're like, how did I get into this? I don't know if everyone does that, but I did. It's like, how did I really get interested in this? I can't say it's because of my childhood or growing up around, you know, dad who was always filming and my mom who was always taking photos, but that could have been a part of it. But I don't know, it's like I went to college being a mechanical engineering major and started that, you know, but it just never, like, I don't know, called to me. I don't know if that's cliche or not, but so as soon as I started doing film, I was like, this is what makes me happy. But you're in Idaho, Boise, there's not a lot of filming opportunities, so I got a job at a local TV station editing news overnight. I did from 11 p.m. to 9 a.m. for about 4 months. I edited B-roll on the news, which is just the crappy, you know, the weather or what's happening overseas, and I did that. But then a producer job opened up, and I applied for that, and I got it. No experience. I mean, I had just been making independent films, documentaries, all that, and I was a young kid, 19 years old, got that job, and was there for 4 years. And but yeah, I mean, I've always had that balance of doing video and cinema and doing photography, and I don't really know when or why I picked up portrait photography. It just, I don't like taking pictures of anything but people, you know. You know, you do what you typically do, what everyone typically does when you get a camera. You go out, you take pictures of birds and trees and mountains and whatever. But I didn't like the fact that someone could go to that same spot I was at the previous day and take a picture, and it would be the exact same picture. You know, you take a picture of a person and it can never be duplicated. It doesn't matter. You could never be duplicated. So that appealed to me more. So it was more of a challenge, and it was more unique. So that's really how I got into portrait photography, or why I do portrait photography. So I don't do photography full-time. Photography doesn't support me. It's still, honestly, is pretty much kind of just like a hobby side thing that I do. I mean, I get paying gigs and that's fine, but I'm a video producer, a videographer. I shoot video, I edit video, I direct video. That's what I do full-time, and that's how I support myself. So it is kind of a transition. It is kind of a mental shift between doing video and doing photography. But it's not as far removed as you might think. I mean, video or film is pretty, I mean, video you're thinking about 30 frames a second. Photography you're thinking about 1 frame a minute maybe, you know. But it's the exact same concept. I mean, it's composition, it's lighting. The only disconnect that's really there for me is sometimes I'll be shooting a picture, or I'll become concepting out a photo shoot. And I'll get on set and I'll be like, I have this great idea for this shot. It's awesome, it's gonna be unique, and then I get my frame and I look at it and I'm framing it and I have my talent where I want them, and it's just not working. And I finally realize, I'm like, oh, I need motion to make this. I need a point A and a point B or whatever to make this shot work, and it doesn't translate on photography. The good thing is that since I do video all the time, still photography actually translates very well to video. I mean, it makes perfect sense. I mean, you're thinking about 1 frame and it's going to be an amazing shot, then it's going to work for motion for the most part. But I mean, the only real other disconnects between doing video and photography, obviously, is just maybe just some of the tools. I mean, obviously I'm shooting film or one shot, or I'm using strobes. You don't use strobes in in video, but that's really it. I mean, there isn't as much, especially now that DSLRs are so popular and we shoot primarily on DSLRs. I mean, they are still photography camera. It's still the same, you know, dials and all that, so. But I don't really like, I used to do freelance video. I don't do freelance video anymore because it's almost impossible to do. I mean, really by yourself. I mean, you probably know better than most, but doing video takes so much effort, not only in production. I mean, just in production, though, think about it. I mean, you've got multiple cameras, angles, you have to have multiple people on set, you have to worry about sound, you have to worry about so many different things, talent direction, talent performance, lighting, you know, everything. And it's really hard to pull off by yourself. You need a full team, big team to do video. You know, you've got dolly shots with moves, and you gotta have PAs and all sorts of stuff. Photo shoots, obviously you need a crew, but I can pretty much do it by myself. I don't have to spend, you know, with video, as much time as you spend on set, I would say double, triple, or quadruple that for post-production, for editing, music, sound design, mixing, all that. But for photography, really, it's take a photo. I mean, I develop, scan. I mean, that's it. It doesn't take, you know, it's not a short amount of time it takes, but I can turn around photos much faster. And honestly, there's just more work to do for photos, really. I mean, everyone needs photos, not everyone needs a video, so I used to be really passionate about video, more so in the cinema realm, documentaries, stuff like that, fiction films, narratives, but I don't know, I did it so long and I kind of got burned out on it, especially locally. You know, the scene is, there's no money in it, it's long hours, and then a lot of times, I mean, the end result just isn't what you think it's going to be because everyone is doing the same thing. You work 40 hours a week, 50 hours a week, and you go and on your spare time you write a script and then you produce it, and you try to find people to help you out on no money, and you're like, maybe I'll be able to feed you, you know. So I got really burned out on it. I did it really hard from like 19 to 24, and then I just got so burned out on it that I honestly, maybe that's why I turned to photography. I don't know. To really, I could just do it by myself. I know I could produce high quality work, and I was the only one I really needed to rely on for the most part. So I do get clients, obviously, for photo shoots who pay me, and we do campaigns and stuff like that, but I also do a large part of just kind of hobby photography just to keep myself kind of sane, you know. But the main difference, I mean, there really isn't a difference. The only thing is, since I don't support myself with my photography, I can be as picky as I want with who I shoot for. I don't have to, you know, I don't have to go shoot some senior portrait or something just to kind of make ends meet. So I can say, I can pick and choose my clients. I do get approached a lot by just various people, and I'm like, oh, you know, this isn't really my interest, but I can refer them to other photographers, so I know that they do that kind of thing. So really, to me, there is no difference. I get to pick my clients, and usually the concepts I pitch or their ideas are right in line with what I would do anyway. So that works out great. Yeah, I mean, there really is no difference for me, honestly, between doing like paid work or commercial work and doing my own hobby stuff. I use the same style teams. Typically, the concepts are usually right in line with what I would do anyway, so that works out really well. But yeah, I started collecting old cameras before I even did photography. You know, I was in video, I was doing film and cinema, and I was shooting at 8mm and 16mm and 35 and a lot of video, mini DV, all that, you know. So I mean, once again, it's all within the same realm, you know. I was always interested in kind of the old format, and so whenever I would see a camera in a thrift store, I started collecting these, you know, forever ago, and people would give me one or whatever. So this was the first film camera I ever bought with actually the intention of shooting on. And you can find these things all over the place, and they're like, you can pick them up for 10, 15, 20 bucks, and they're actually, I mean, they're kind of crappy. I mean, they're really like the 50s and 60s versions of what we have now as a compact camera, where a digital you just shoot. It's got like minor settings, and I've actually run one roll through this, and it was a really interesting kind of look, and it had that kind of old look because the lens isn't very sharp, and it's got like 3 settings for aperture, and it's not like aperture settings, it's like bright, sunny, or sunny, medium sunny, and dark settings, you know. So But they were kind of interesting. I used them on a really creative, colorful shoot that had lots of umbrellas and stuff, but I don't shoot on any of these. I would shoot on some of them if they still made film for them, but I don't. But most of my cameras are that I shoot on now. I think the newest camera I shoot on now is from the 80s. Other than that, it's usually 50s and 60s cameras that I shoot on. I use Photoshop on almost every image I take, but I don't use it typically for anything other than hair, scratch, and dust removal. That's it, really. But I mean, I do shoot primarily film, but I do also shoot digital. I mean, you have those clients. I have a Canon 5D Mark II, you know, that old workhorse. And I do a lot of fitness photography, and fitness photography just makes a lot more sense and is a lot easier with a digital. So I do shoot a lot of digital, and but even on my digital photos, I try to retouch very, very little in post. I try to keep my stuff extremely raw. It just, I mean, unless the concept from the get-go is like, I'm gonna do this and make it super stylized, that's what I want. I'm a photographer. I'm not a digital artist or a retoucher. I mean, I know enough to get me by and to make certain clients happy, but yeah, I've never been a big, if you ask anyone who's ever shot with me or who helped me in the early days, I would just preach, I'm like, this is not photography. This is a different medium that I'm not in, you know? That would be like, I don't know. It's just a completely different realm, genre. That would be like me trying to do makeup for my shoot. Well, I don't do makeup. Just because it's in the photo doesn't mean I do it. So, you know. Plus, part of it, I feel like a lot of people just try and compensate, you know. So, I feel like a lot of people, if you don't really know how to get what you need in camera, they feel like they can, you know, fix it. And I'm sure everyone's heard that, fix it in post and all that. So I've been hearing that in film and cinema forever. So, yeah. I do very little in Photoshop. My style is that I really, really don't want to have a style, really. I can't really speak to my video because I don't do video by myself anymore. I work with a team and it's a big creative process, so I don't have a style with that. I have a team and I love the work we do. But for photography, I've thought about this a lot, and I don't want a style. I don't want someone to see one of my images and see my work repeatedly and be like, without even seeing a watermark, would be like, oh, I know who took that. That's like the last thing I would want. I want almost every one of my shoots to be completely unique from the other. I mean, ideally, in an ideal world, that's what I would have. I get a little worried about that sometimes. I mean, I think maybe I should just focus on one thing and get really good at it, you know? Maybe I should be really good at this one style of photography and do great at that. So if I did just one style of photography, I think I would get really bored. But then I also doubt myself, you know? If I could get really good at one thing, that would be awesome. I would get bored, but I'm sometimes afraid that because I am spreading myself through so many different looks and so many different shoots, that I'm actually only getting kind of good at multiple things, as opposed to getting really good at one thing. And I think about it and then I get a little stressed, and then maybe I'm not doing as good as I could, or I'm doing a bunch of mediocre work that no one really likes. But then I'm like, I don't really care that much, you know? Once again, most of the time I really just do this for me. So if I can get really good at a lot of things, obviously that's where you'd want to be, but in the end you just want to do what, you know, makes you happy in your artistic eye. So when I look at all my work, like, I'll love something when I first scan it in. I look, oh, that's awesome, that's awesome. 2 weeks later, if I look at it, I'll usually hate it. And I think that's, I don't know, I feel like that kind of helps, you know? I mean, that's constantly looking to improve. I mean, if you think you're taking the best photo you've ever taken and it can't get any better than that, you know, if you can't go anywhere, then, you know, I think you can get complacent and your work will suffer. So I'm never happy or satisfied. I'm actually usually pretty disappointed in my photography, but so yeah, that goes back to maybe I should just focus on one thing, but I would get bored and have to quit photography and, I don't know, do something else. The thing about photography that I think has always really interested me, because it's ironic, I love doing portrait photography, but I'm not usually a people person. Like, I usually feel like I come off very dry and kind of like a jerk, but the thing about photography is I've always had an extremely technical mind, but then I've always had this random kind of creative side. And the thing about photography is you have to have both, I think. I mean, digital is making it easier for people not to have to think as much about the technical side because they could just move much things around, but you have to be able to understand the technical to create creative, if that makes sense. You have to say, okay, I want this result, so I have to mess with these things. I understand that because I have this size of film or this big of a sensor or this, it will affect my image in this way. And you have to be able to understand all these things and put them together to create, you know, what you want. It's just like what an artist would do. They're like, I have to have this brush and this color paint to make this happen. And there's an extreme technical side to it. And that's always kind of helped both sides of my brain. I think if it was just one or the other, I don't think I would be as interested in it. Because it's like when I get a new camera, I get really excited to shoot on it. You know, it's like I only want to shoot on that camera, and then I totally master it. I'm like, I think I need to buy a new camera so I can master that one. You know, it's just the next thing, it's the next thing, it's the next thing. And it's, I'm sick of having someone else develop my film. I need to develop my own film so I can figure out that process. And once I got that, it's a little boring, but now I'm kind of stuck with it. So yeah, that's kind of what's always driven me. But yeah, I already kind of hit on it, but the reason that portrait photography really drives me is just the fact, yeah, once again, that no frame can ever be duplicated, ever. Never. You can have the same model, same outfit, same location, same time of day, but I mean, something will be slightly different. You know, I think I might think of photography a little backwards than some portrait photographers. I don't know, I haven't really thought about this, so this answer could be completely inaccurate, honestly, but obviously it's when you connect with a model, the photos are going to turn out better when you connect. Sometimes I do find it hard to connect. That's why I'm super picky with my models, you know. I like to work with experienced models most of the time. I'm not very good at engagement shots, weddings. I don't do those just because I'm not like that. But I think more of the scene and the overall composition, and then I kind of put a model into that. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I do develop, every time you shoot a model on set, I mean, you do develop some kind of relationship with them, and it obviously does come out in the photos, and it does change them a little bit, generally, hopefully for the good, and it does build them more confidence. But I do see it most when obviously I do a lot of fitness photography, but I do a lot of fitness photography specifically actually on not a lot of professional fitness models. I actually have the opportunity to work with a lot of people who have never been photographed before, who have, like, a lot of moms and stuff who have had the best bodies ever or whatever, and they always want to remember that moment. And so when you get on set, I think that's honestly, with them, that's what's honestly helped me learn to direct models in general, because they're super uncomfortable when you get on set. They're really self-conscious, but they know they want these photos, but by the end of it, they're just like so relaxed. Typically that's what you want. And they're just so grateful. They're like, I've never felt more beautiful, you know, and it happens almost every shoot like that. So that carries over into all my shoots, I think. But yeah, that does make sense. I mean, when I first started shooting, I would look at Vogues and those really super high fashion magazines and look at all those crazy avant-garde shoots, and you'd see these models in like these crazy poses, and they're like with this awesome hair and all this. And so every shoot I did, I would just pose the hell out of my models. I was probably super awkward, and they were always like, do this and do that with these crazy concepts, as well produced as I could have done. And I look back at my work, and it's just kind of laughable. I mean, it's like you can't force that, really. You have to, when you engage the model and the person that is the model, the photos turn out better. But it's different for every shoot though too, because you want to, some shoots you have a concept and you have to pose people and all that. I've never had a plan for goals or where I'm gonna go. I've always just kind of flown by the seat of my pants. I'm like, I like this, I'm gonna do this. I like that, I'm gonna do that. With photography, I don't have, you know, I am split, you know, in my creative world. Video, full-time job. I work for a great company, bodybuilding.com. I have a great team under me and I love the videos we produce. But then, yeah, I have my photography on the side, and it's amazingly creative. It's an outlet for me. Since I don't shoot as much video as I used to, I don't have a goal or anywhere I really want to go. I just want to keep learning and producing. I'd really like to be able to really help kind of bring up the market in Boise and kind of bring quality, like, because even for video, film, all that, it's not really the kind of town that has a lot of that creative stuff going on. You know, you think LA, it's all these videos and photo shoots. I don't want Boise to be like LA by any means, but it would be nice to create like a really creative, interesting movement here, but I don't know if I'm the person to do that. I just, like I said, I just want to keep creating completely unique shoots for me. So for me, when I'm concepting out a shoot or have an idea in my mind or have a shoot coming up on the horizon or whatever, I can't really sleep very well. You know, I think a lot of people are that way. You just sit there and you mull it over and you think about lighting diagrams and time of day and schedules and all that stuff. And it's just, it's like build up and build up and build up depending on the concept. Usually, I mean, I concept my shoots out for, you know, months in advance. I just think about them. And then finally the day comes, and it's extremely nerve-wracking for like the first hour until people show up, and then I'm great. I'm like, whatever. Really, it's just getting to that point. I'm afraid something's gonna go wrong. But what I found is that you don't have to stress or worry as long as you plan right, and that's, the creative isn't just in the photo. The creative is in how you come to the photo and how you organize it and how happy the people on your crew are. That's really what probably gives me the fulfillment. You know, you work with people who are donating their time and their resources just like you are, and the thing that fulfills me creatively is they love the images, cool, but they had a good time and they feel like they were part of the creative process. I'm never going to go on set and be like, okay, this is what we're doing, and you're doing it exactly like this, and you're going to model exactly like this. Everyone has input, and that's important on paid gigs, not paid gigs. So yeah, I mean, the creative is in the photo, the composition, the lighting, what kind of strobes you're using, what kind of all that. But the creative is everything kind of put together, and that's, to me, as a kind of a producer as well, that's when I can sleep well, when I know a shoot ran really well and we all did a good job. Well, I think, I don't want to sound totally cliche quoting someone here, but I think it was Ansel Adams who said that the most important component in your camera is the 10 inches behind it. And it's not the camera, it's not the lens, it's not the lights, it's really what you do and you see, and how you interpret it. One of the biggest things, I think, especially in these days and age, we've got so many different formats and cameras and gear and stuff coming out, and I feel like people are chasing all this stuff. And they're like, oh, did you hear about the new camera that has this sensor in it or whatever? And it's like, you can take amazing images with, I mean, my first camera was a piece of crap with a kit lens, without that stuff. And I feel like, once again, if you slow down, obviously film helps with that, but if you just slow down and really take your time, learn the basics, and shoot, I mean, that's really what I kind of had to learn for myself. I mean, I started, once again, shooting digital exact same way as everyone, making the same mistakes as everyone else, but then as soon as I learned to slow down and kind of really reflect on what I was doing, saying, why am I taking this picture? I mean, that's a question I ask myself all the time. It's like, why am I taking this picture? And I think that's important, because in this world with Instagram and all sorts of just mindless photos being taken and shared and uploaded all over the place, why are you taking that photo? I mean, it's, I don't know, if people thought about that more so, they'd probably be like, well, there's no well, you know, if you understand why you're taking the photo, I mean, the people who view it will probably understand why you took the photo as well. So yeah, I mean, I think that's probably more and more I think about that, and I think that's the main component, and I try and put thought behind most of my photo. I try and put thought behind my photos. Yeah, I mean, that's the main thing with me. I don't want to be a snapshot photographer. I don't think I'm like an artist. I think I'm an art art photography is its own genre, but yeah, I just want there to be some kind of meeting or have someone kind of take something away from it, not think like he just handedly took this photo, you know. So I shoot 99% of my photos on film, and I do all my own processing. I do shoot some digital, obviously, but when I first started shooting film, I didn't know how to process film. So I looked at websites, and I forget who I sent it into, but I sent in photos, and there's film, and they developed them into negatives. They scanned them and sent me back the negatives and the disc, and I did that probably twice for 2 batches of film. But I don't send anything off to anyone ever anymore. I don't like that. That to me is handing off half of your creative process to someone, and you can't fully interpret your creative vision when someone else is doing half of it. Really, in this digital world, when all my photos actually end up in digital, if I start on film, everything ends up digital. I don't print anything. That so much happens, as I've learned from the development process and from the scanning process, that completely changes the image. And I need to have complete creative control over it. Now, if you are a photographer who, once again, wants to have a brand and wants to have a look, that's probably just fine, because you will have that consistent kind of look every time. But since I want to completely change my look pretty much from shoot to shoot, I need to have that kind of creative control over the processing. I mean, how you develop, the temperatures you develop, how long you develop, just on that end. And then you scan in and you can change the curves and the exposure and the contrast. That's important to me. So I don't think, plus it's expensive, man. It's like, it's pennies on the dollar to do it yourself compared to having someone else do it after you get the gear. And it's, I don't know, it's really easy. It's just a little time consuming, that's about it. But yeah, I mean, when I first decided I'm going to develop my own film, I bought some old school photography books down from a bookstore, used bookstore downtown, and I started reading them. And in one of the books, one of the first pages, it talks about developing film, and it says if you can make an omelet, a 3-part omelet, you can develop film. And I was like, no, that's ridiculous. I don't know what you're talking about. It's got to be more complicated than that. And I started reading, and it's so easy. I mean, just, it's like $90 in supplies to get started, and then it's literally just like 20 minutes and 4 steps, and you have developed film into negatives, and then you let it dry. I mean, it's super simple. And it's funny because every time I'm talking to people and they're like, hey, what do you do? I'm like, photographer. Oh yeah, how do you shoot? I shoot on film. And they're like, oh, how do you get that? You can still get film, is one of the main questions. But then the other one is like, where do you get a process? And I say I process it myself. And then immediately the next question is, oh, you have a darkroom? And I'm like, no. Every time they ask me, they say the same thing. And I'm like, no, you can actually develop film in my kitchen in full sunlight. And they're like, oh. And then once again, in this digital world, all my clients want their photos digital. You can print from digital if you need to. I just scan them in. So it's super easy. You just need to, I don't know. Once I figured that out, I'm like, no brainer. I mean, the film development process, yeah, I mean, it's a little bit different from color to black and white, and it's a little unnerving the first time. I actually did take a class to kind of help me out, but I wasn't one of the kids. I think they were still offering like film developing and darkroom and stuff when I was in school, but I never took those classes, so I had no idea at all how to do it. I was like, I don't know. You need a 50-gallon vat of something, and you dip it in it, and you got a hazard suit. But no, I developed my kitchen, tank this big, and I listen to music and just develop film for 8 hours. So that's about it. I mean, it's fun. I mean, it does get really boring. It takes about 30 minutes to process a batch or a roll of black and white film, and it takes about 20 minutes for color. And it's super boring and repetitive, but I mean, no matter how boring and repetitive it is, I mean, it's actually always exciting. You never want to stop because you need to see your photos. I mean, in this world of instant gratification, we have instant photos all the time. I mean, delaying that for 3 days and then you're down to 20 minutes and you're like, I don't care how boring this is. I'm gonna do it, and I really need to see this photo, you know? I need to see, because honestly, it's a little bit like, did I mess up these photos? I kind of need to see, because I'm not sure. But yeah, as boring as it is, it's, yeah, I never want to not do it, so. Yeah, I mean, just in general, I mean, I think outside of photography, it can be applied to or not to, but I think people do tend to stress out a lot over things. They overthink things, they compare themselves to other people, and there's two kinds of stress. I mean, one is really unproductive and one's extremely productive, but if you just kind of relax and think about what you're doing, I mean, stress is very productive and to an extent. So yeah, I think people, I mean, in general these days, I don't know if in photography, I mean, I used to do it too, especially when I tried to compare myself to other people's work. You know, you'd stress out, I don't know, I'm not good enough, or you just gotta kind of let that go and just really focus on yourself. And if you need to stress about something like a photo shoot or logistics or something like that, make it productive stress as opposed to unproductive stress where you just freak out and just kind of break down or, you know, blow up at someone. But yeah, that's one thing, and that is one thing people comment. You commented, I mean, people look at me and they're like, even in stressful situations, they're like, dude, you're so freaking chill. How are you so relaxed right now? And it's like, there's no point. I don't get stressed, I just get focused. And I think if more people just got focused, they'd probably be a lot happier in general and probably a lot more productive. But I mean, that's applied to photography too. It's like, if something goes wrong, or if you feel uncomfortable in a situation, or you can't, or there's a model that you can't pose right, or you're not getting the shot you want, I mean, it's never gonna work to kind of freak out about it. You just have to chill out, especially when it comes to models. If you just kind of start freaking out, or like, even if you don't say anything or do anything, they'll sense it. They really will, and then you're screwed for the entire shoot, really, unless you just chill out, take a deep breath, and just deal with it. You know, I really haven't been shooting film that long. I think I've been at it maybe 1.5 years now out of my 9-year photography video career. But I was mulling it over. My mom always shot on film, and I've been collecting these cameras even before I, you know, started on film. But then I watched the film show, and I was like, all right, that was like, you know, the straw that broke the camel's back. I was like, all right, I gotta do this. This is kind of cool. So yeah, I watched all of season 1. You know, Tanya, Tia, Ryan, all them, and then I've started into season 2 just now with Jonas and Jan and all those guys, and I watch them all. But I mean, I do find it inspiring. It's a little intimidating, you know, because they're such good photographers, but once again, you can't really, you know, compare yourself to other photographers like that. So it's more inspiring than anything, and I think it's helped me quite a bit. So when I first decided I wanted to shoot on film, I was like, every photo I take when I go to film is gonna be amazing, you know? It's like, it has that look and it looks so good, and I see what all these other guys are doing with their film and it's gonna look so good. It's not like that at all. I mean, it's still, I mean, it is a look, and I think it is a very high quality look, but film is just like any other kind of photography. I mean, if you don't know what you're doing, you're gonna suck and your photos are gonna be bad. And it really kind of took me back to basics. You know, I was reflecting on it the other day. People think digital, and I'm not harping on digital, you know, I shoot digital. I mean, I shoot DSLRs, you know, and it's a very useful tool. It's one tool in the bag, you know, when you need to use a screwdriver, you don't use a hammer, you know, so. But the thing about digital is everyone's like, oh, it simplifies things. I can get into photography, and because I have digital now, and it's cheap, but it's like, shooting on my old cameras, you have like 3 things you need to worry about when you shoot on one of my cameras, on one of these old cameras that was made in the 60s or 70s. You've got to worry about your shutter speed, you've got to worry about your aperture, and you've got to worry about whether or not it's in focus. Those are really the things only things you have to worry about, for the most part. But then you look at one of these digital cameras, and they shoot on them, and it's just ridiculous how many things you have to worry about on a digital camera. It's like, you know, you've got autofocus, manual focus, you've got adjustable ISO ratings, you've got different shooting settings. You can do shutter priority, you can do manual, auto, full auto, you know, you've got you've got a built-in flash, you've just got so many different things that you can mess with, color temperature. There's probably about 50 things you need to do on a digital camera to make an image, to adjust an image, really. I mean, when you think about it. But film photography, I mean, it's like, and two out of those three things that you have to worry about on a film camera, you know, once again, you've got the focus, you've got the aperture, and you've got the shutter speed. Two of those things, you have a tool that tells you exactly what to do with them. You point it at the thing, whoever you're shooting or wherever you're shooting, and it tells you how to do 2 or 3 settings. So really all you have to worry about in your camera is if it's in focus, and then you just shoot. And so people seem to get really intimidated to think about film because they don't get that instant feedback. They can't know instantly what it looks like, but you just have to have confidence that your settings are correct. Problem is, when you get a new person using a digital camera, that would probably be way more intimidating, because even if something's wrong and it doesn't look the way you want it to look, they probably have no idea how to make it, how to fix it, you know? I mean, on one of these camera, on a digital camera, you take a picture and it's overexposed. I mean, once again, you've got to, is it your ISO? Is it your aperture? Is it your shutter speed? You know, it's just so many different things that you can have multiple adjustments to them. I mean, is your picture style set right? Is your image stabilization on? It's just like all these crazy things. So that's one of the things I really love about film. And all my cameras, everything I own, everything that's ever been made or ever will be made for them is already out. I don't have to spend time chasing the next greatest whatever. So that's honestly one of the main things I like about shooting these old kind of antique cameras, because they produce great results. I mean, you look at the image sensor on a digital camera and it's, you know, what, this big or whatever, but I mean, like, that's my smallest in a 35mm print that you can scan at whatever resolution you want. My main format, you know, is this big, and then my large format is this big. I mean, that's as big as my sensor is. So if people would just kind of understand the basis of film and how it actually influenced and created digital, I think they'd probably draw a lot more to it. I want people to go back to film because I don't want it to go away, and I think there is kind of an uprise to it. So if people start shooting more film, then I'll be able to keep buying film for my cameras. So buy film. My name is Levi Bettwieser. I am a film photographer, digital photographer, and a video producer, and I have just been framed.